So boys, this is update 1.2.3. That's right, these are the exotic changes that came, and Dunemarchers got a hefty buff to linear actuators. Now, linear actuators, that is the thing that actually will build up as you begin to sprint, and then when you melee an enemy, there will be a chain of lightning that will hit multiple enemies. And what's so good about it is you can hit an enemy that's not even really that close to other enemies, but as they begin to walk away from you, if they walk in proximity of that enemy, they will actually carry that chain lightning damage to the enemies and change the damage through the rest of them. Now, linear actuators actually does 85 damage now with the chain damage to nearby enemies. Something to take note of though, guys, the enemy that you actually make contact with on your melee does not actually receive that extra 85 damage from linear actuators. Linear actuators is just essentially one of those things that allows for chain damage and extra bit of AoE damage to nearby enemies, making it much easier for you to deal with enemies that are grouping together. Now, there's other things that have good synergy with Dunemarchers. You've got things like Top Tree Striker, which is really good. That is primarily what you see this gameplay of. There's also Top Tree Sunbreaker, which essentially applies melting point. The beautiful thing about that is it now jumps that linear actuator damage from now 85 to 128. And of course, if you apply melting point to the group of enemies, it's a good chance that one or two of them will burn out, and maybe even more depending on how close enemies are in proximity of each other. So yesterday, for the longest time in private matches, we were constantly trying to load out things to make our shoulder charge as powerful as possible. What is the likely chance that we're going to get into a situation where we can get a one-hit kill with our shoulder charge? The problem is practicality, and we did find a way to get one-hit kills with shoulder charge, which is of course with Sunbreaker. Top Tree Sunbreaker allows you to apply a melting point, which would essentially always get the kill every single time if you can catch just two enemies together. But despite as much as I love hammers, and believe me guys, I love me some hammers, I realized that Dunemarchers is just not getting the right or the correct synergy by using it with Top Tree Sunbreakers, which is why I decided to go ahead and roll it with Top Tree Striker. Essentially guys, you get Seismic Strike, which means after sprinting for a short period of time, you use the melee to do a slam shoulder charge first into the target, and that releases an arc explosion on impact. Now, that arc explosion is not something that's going to get the one-hit KO, but the synergy here with the next perk, Aftershocks, which essentially means damaging enemies with Seismic Strike, grants you grenade energy as well as rocking Top Tree anyways to allow you to get 2 pulse grenades. Guys, I know this is like flashbacks to the beginning of Destiny 2, but this is great synergy here with Dunemarchers. Now, I'm rocking 2 different mods here, guys. I'm essentially going with 2 arc melee ability mods, and I'm also rocking an arc grenade cooldown mod. Essentially, guys, this is always allowing me to keep my melee coming back to where I can consistently keep shoulder charging, and I can consistently keep throwing grenades to do cleanup for me after landing the initial shoulder charge. Now, I know the synergy there could be better, right? Like the synergy for Insurmountable Skullfort is really good. This right here, though, just always maintains that you're going to be able to get multi-kills in Crucible just based off of your melee, and especially if you can get your shoulder charge into enemies to get that Seismic Strike off on enemies and get that AoE explosion, it's extremely nasty. So overall, guys, Dunemarchers is in a very good spot. It is probably, and still probably, my favorite exotic on the Titan class. I like moving quick, I like getting around places fast, I like the slide distance because I normally am sliding a bunch, and on top of that, Linear Actuators is doing a hefty amount of damage in PvP, and in PvE, it's just as nasty, man. And that's the thing, dude. PvE, you're almost able to consistently just run through a strike and just keep melee enemies. I've got gameplay of just the Leviathan raid here, just killing some ads, but I did a strike earlier and I was just consistently just getting linear actuators to activate in that short time span of only a second and a half and just meleeing enemies, and that chain lightning was doing some devastating damage to ads, and it does such a good job because most ads in PvE are very much grouped together, especially just like trash mobs and stuff. And the beautiful thing about all of this is there's no cooldown for linear actuators. all you have to do is just start sprinting again, and boom, you've got it back. So overall, this exotic has definitely jumped on the top of the list as being a top tier exotic and something that Titans needed. As far as what you should be loading out with this, again, like I said, there's a lot of things you can probably load out. I mean, I was loading out bottom tree, Sentinel to just run in there and shield bash, and you can disorient enemies that way. But for me, for synergy purposes, for consistently going in there, throwing grenades, and just wreaking havoc, I would say Top Tree Striker with Dunemarchers is probably one of the better loadouts in Crucible right now, at least in terms of 6v6. And believe me, I think most of us are going to be playing 6v6 right now because it is just so much damn fun. Well, guys, that is my Dunemarcher review. I know I rambled quite a bit here, but this is definitely one of my favorite exotics in the game and one that rewards an aggressive hand. And aggressiveness is something that has just not been rewarded in Destiny 2 for the longest of time, and I'm so happy that it's starting to be rewarded more. Well, guys, that wraps up things for Dunemarchers. Thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.